I'm your host, Lou Carter, founder of Most Loved Workplace. The Leader Show brings together executives and leading thinkers to bring into focus our collective purpose and passion for what we do and where we do it. The search for occupational fulfillment, happiness, pride, and passion starts here. Hey, everybody. It's me, Lou Carter. How you doing? It's good to see everybody. And today's going to be a fun day because we're going to do some drumming with Clint Pulver. And Clint's going to show us a little bit about his book too. I love it here. And it is about love, loving what you do. Also really talking about these kind of moments in life that change you, that all leaders should be doing. And I have a few of them myself. The president of my college gave me a chance to do a first college student-run course evaluation guide, going from a time in my life in elementary school where my teacher made me play the cowbell instead of the snare drum that I wanted to play, and never let me into the snare drum. So I found George Holmes, who changed my life forever. And Clint's got someone like that too, he'll talk to you about. And George taught me a lot. He taught me the rudiments, the stick control. And I really had that inflection point in my life. And I connect to Clint's story about that very much when he was given an opportunity. And that kind of real passion that exists between people and engagement is what Most Loved Workplace is really all about too, creating that highly engaged, loving culture where people perform 3 to 4 times more, stay 3 to 4 times more, and everyone wants to work for you. And that really exists. And you'll see some of it today. So we'll play some drums. We'll learn about stories. We'll talk about I love it here. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I give you, Clint, your video. You ready, Clint? You're on with me. Hey, Clint, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, it's good to see you. And I want to learn a lot about you, and I want to hear too about American Idol. If we just start there, I think it'd be kind of cool. Like, what happened? How did you get to American Idol? Let's talk about that first.
So it's America's Got Talent.
America's Got Talent.
And I was contacted by the show, by the show's producer. They were looking for a drummer, and they wanted me to come on to literally play the drums on Howie Mandel's head.
Nice.
That is the true story of how it all began and started. And they had heard about me, had seen me on YouTube, had watched videos of me drumming, and wanted a somewhat famous drummer to come on the show. And they scripted it out. There's a lot of most people don't know this, but much of the show is scripted. It's all television. It's all about creating a good story. So they scripted it out to make it look like we came and auditioned, and I was playing drums on the heads of bald men.
Mm-hmm.
And they called it bald man bongos. And
I gotta put my hat on, Clint. So
yeah, there you go. There you go. Now we're thinking.
Now we're feeling right.
Love it.
Go ahead.
And that's how it happened. I went and we auditioned. We were on the main stage. We weren't really auditioning, but and then they brought Howie Mandel on the stage, and I played the drums on his head. That's
awesome. What did you play? So that's the question. Like, to not hurt him, were you at a 4/4 or 6/8? What kind of what did you play? Just is it kind of singles or what?
Yeah, just a lot of singles, some doubles. Couple little paradiddles on his head.
Nice. That's an awesome story. So that kind of began, and you've been living kind of that passion, right, in everything you do. And the story, I really like the story, the inflection point you had. Tell us about your inflection point, that kind of pivot moment for you when when you're a kid and you saw that sort of a leader who found this in you, and about being ambidextrous and seeing something in you perhaps that you didn't see, which is what we all need to do as leaders.
Yeah, I had an educator in my life called Mr. Jensen. That was his name, and he changed my life. I was the kid that was always deemed a problem. I was the kid that had a hard time sitting still. I still have a hard time sitting still. Yeah. I would just tap. I would move. My hands would go. It would happen when I would focus, even when I would read, or I could write with my right hand, and then I could switch the pen and write with my left hand, and I would tap while I was writing. Like, I just had this ambidextrous quality, and everybody saw that as an annoyance. Everybody saw that as a limitation, as a disturbance, as a problem. But it was that teacher, Mr. Jensen, who, 23 years ago called me after class and said, I need to see you. We're going to have a conversation. And he sat me down and he said, listen, I've been watching you and it's just crazy what you can do. And I know you're the kid that's kind of on the list. You're the kid that everybody, they talk about, the teachers talk about you. I know you get teased. I know you get bullied. But it's crazy. As I watch, you know, I want to know if you can do this. And he asked if I could tap my head and rub my belly at the same time. And I gave it a go and I could do it. And he said, can you switch that? Can you rub your head and then tap your belly? And literally, without thinking about it, I could do it. And he looked at me and he said, I don't think you're a problem. I just think you're a drummer. And sometimes people hear that and they're like, oh, geez, what's the difference between those two?
I'm just going to say, usually that's the problem.
Yeah. And
it's a good thing.
I believe in moments, though. I'm a huge fan of moments. I think that's in our lives. That's what we remember. We don't remember days. We remember moments. We remember those specific experiences when we're at the right place at the right time with the right person, where this or this happens, and it's pivotal, it's significant, it's epic. It's something that really does write a great story, because in that moment, Mr. Jensen, that old teacher, he leaned back in his desk, he opened up the top drawer, and he reached inside and he took out my very first pair of drumsticks. My very first pair. And put them in my hands, and he said, I have no idea what's gonna happen, but this is what I see when I look at you. And keep them in your hands. And let's just see how the story unfolds. And that was 23 years ago. And for 23 years, I've had the opportunity to tour and record all over the world as a professional drummer, and have played some really cool shows and events and artists and touring and recording and coaching. And I worked with the Utah Jazz NBA drumline for 7 years. My whole college education was paid for. America's Got Talent. I mean, my life has drastically changed and been a better story because one person chose to see what was right instead of seeing what was wrong.
That's awesome. And we're talking about bands, and because I was just asked this the other day, and they said, you know, what makes you or others really love what they do in a band, right? Even though there's conflict. Right? And there's one thing that sort of is a common denominator in everything you do, which is you love what you do. So the question is, there's the why question, which is kind of metaphysical. Oh, I love what I do because I love to do what I'm doing. And you get back to the same question, right? To the actual job itself. There's something bigger, though, isn't there, than just I love what I'm doing. It's love what I do and love who I'm doing this with and what I'm doing as a larger institution. Tell me more about how that works for you and how you see that within companies too, because I see it all the time. You know, we have jobs. I love my job, but do I love the company, right?
Sure.
And am I in an existential crisis right now in my work? Right? Everyone's saying that right now. So what do you see as sort of the way for you to kind of bring that kind of same feeling of drumming goodness, you know, and awareness of those people? What have you seen?
Well, I would call what you're explaining purpose. You know, there's passion, there's the ability to provide, and then there's purpose. The ability to really do something bigger than yourself, that sense of significance in the workplace, not just success. There's a big difference between those two things. That it comes down to really not just loving your job or loving where you work, but actually loving who you are while you're at work. That's a big difference. And just to give a little bit of context, for the last 5 years, I've worked as the undercover millennial. It's kind of like undercover boss without the makeup. I would go undercover as a millennial. That's what I am by the age I was born, the year I was born. And so as a millennial, I would go into an organization undercover as someone who was looking for a job. So I'd walk into a Chick-fil-A, a Walmart, a Verizon store, a hospitality chain, a construction site, and I'd go up to the first person that I saw and I'd just say, hey, I'm just thinking about applying. You know, what's it like? Would you recommend it? And the employee, they always get quiet. You know, they kind of look around. It feels like an illegal drug exchange. And then they tell me everything, because I'm not a survey. I'm not another manager. I'm not within the company. I'm just a potential hire. And in doing so, we created an environment where employees could speak their truth. They could be really honest with me. And we have done that with hundreds and hundreds of organizations. And I have interviewed thousands and thousands of employees undercover. And we wrote a book about it. And the book is called I Love It Here: How Great Leaders Create Organizations Their People Never Want to Leave. And to answer your question, that it's really the reason why I titled the book I Love It Here, because that was the magic of the research. Is when I would go into an organization and say, what's it like to work here? And the employees would respond with, I love it here. I love my job. I love what I get to do. I love who I am while I'm here. You should apply. And then I'd go to the next employee and the next and the next in that organization, and they would all have similar responses. Why? What was it that the leaders were doing in that culture to create that kind of loyalty and significance? It's the same thing I do as a drummer. When I sit down and play with other musicians, I've never, in all of the years I've played as a professional drummer, no musician has ever asked, how fast can you play? And no musician ever asks, like, well, we'll hire you, but we only hire you if you can do the stick twirly thing. Can you twirl your sticks? Like, nobody cares. What they care about are the moments that I create in the music. That's how a good song becomes a hit song. I can sit down and I could play 3 seconds of We Will Rock You, and instantly people know what that is. I could play the fill from Phil Collins, right? In the Air Tonight. People would recognize that. I could play Wipeout. Yeah, iconic moments that drummers have made in music that took a good song and made it a hit song. And it's the same thing in leadership. How do we create those moments where people, when they're at work, they go, yeah, I like it. And they want to come back and they want to be there. It's the same thing in music. How do we create a song where people go, I like it. And they listen to it again and again and again and again. And in doing so, it becomes significant, legendary, not just a one-hit wonder.
Hey, Clint, what did you find were some of those moments, if you were to define them inside of companies? I know people will want to know that. So what kind of moments they can make for employees?
Yeah, right now, one of the first things I would talk about that employees talked about, again, I'm speaking from the lens of the employee, because I think it's important to understand, because most managers have no idea when they're doing poorly, because no employee is going to speak their truth. No employee is going to walk up to you as a leader and say, hey, I just want you to know you micromanage everything that I do. Just want you to know that. No employee is going to say, you're the guy that takes all the credit when we win as a team. I just want you to know that. You're also the guy that blames everybody else when we lose. Like, most employees don't say that. So most managers have no idea when they're doing poorly. One thing that I would recommend as we're coming into this crazy time amidst COVID and within COVID, and things are coming up now with the variable, and we're coming into flu season. Employees have two things on their mind. Number one, they remember how they were treated during the pandemic and currently during the pandemic. Second, they've all had time to think. Employees have had time. And now in the world, the landscape of employment has changed probably more than it has in the last 70, 80 years. And that's where employees are realizing, I can live in Colorado and work in New York City whenever I want and make twice as much. I can have flexibility. They've got options where most employees, especially my generation and younger, have 3 or 4 jobs. We have 3 or 4 side hustles besides the main job. The landscape has really changed, and it's given people the chance to kind of question and go, do I really want to be here? And so one of the greatest ways for you to tap into what your employees are really thinking, wanting, and feeling is to conduct what I call a status interview. Most employers have no idea what the status is. The status would determine the vital signs of how your employee is doing, and then that determines treatment. Check the vitals, that determines treatment. So in the status interview, I would recommend for everybody that's listening, if you have employees, think of 2 or 3 of them that if they left tomorrow in your organization, it would put you in a hard spot. People that you can't lose right now. I would create a moment with those people, bring them in, start with vocal praise, and then ask them these 3 questions. Number 1, what can I do as your employer to keep you here? Number 2, what's getting in the way of your success at work? And number 3, what can I do as your manager or as your boss or your leader to help you get to where you want to go?
Cool, man.
Those three questions, most employees are never asked those questions because employers are sometimes worried or they're afraid to get the answer. And those questions, I believe, open up the window to understand the status of what your employees are really feeling and thinking right now. And it's worth asking.
Hey, Clint, did you get any info on problem employees who weren't performing?
Yeah.
Didn't bring in sales, weren't doing very well. And did you get any info on them?
Yep. There's always a line between standards in an organization and connection. So standards you always have to have as an employer. There's a job to be done. There's business to be had. There's profits that need to be made. There's the bottom line. There's projections. There's goals. There's growth. There's development in a company. The second piece is that connection piece, though, to be able to empathize. And if you have somebody in that organization that isn't pulling their weight, that isn't doing what they need to do, it's hard to give a golden rule answer to this because every situation is different. But I will say that some people need to be coached out.
Yeah.
There are some people that need to leave your organization. But I've also seen those hard employees that are struggling and they get a new manager and then all of a sudden, in literally a month or two, they change and they start performing better because of what the manager did. So it depends. There's always a different situation. And there are those managers that are hitting their head against a wall with an employee and it's just not moving. And I think we have an obligation as leaders to, again, help people to live fulfilling lives. And if that means they need to live a more fulfilling life outside of your company, then that's okay too.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny. There's this intermediary step, right, to training that we don't talk about. And it seems to sort of fluffy, but it's not, because connection's essential. Respect. How do we collaborate? How do we keep that positive vision of the future? In what ways are we aligning values and then getting to achievement? So we jump too quickly and we immediately grab the person and say, learn this and do that because it's too late, right? And learn all these best practices. And there's steps in between that we forget about.
Yep. In our research, we found that no significant loyalty will ever happen without significant connection. Period. No significant loyalty ever happens without significant connection. Sometimes as managers, they're trying to make these withdrawals, but they've never made any deposits of trust. So there's nothing in the bank account of that world of connection to make the withdrawals, but yet they're still trying. And it creates rebellion. It creates pushback. It creates division. It creates lack of communication. It creates a lack of empathy. So connect, because every employee, this is something I learned firsthand. Every employee is always asking this of their employer. Let me know when it gets to the part about me. And sometimes we hear that in management and we think, well, those entitled little shining stars in my life. Like, let me know when it gets to the part about me. And I would say it's not so much about entitlement. It's about bringing humanity back into the workplace.
Right on.
About them.
Yeah, it's funny. I think we found each other through emotional connectedness. Did we? Is that what we originally did? I
think so. I'm not totally certain. I don't know.
Yeah, we probably did. We're really similar in some strange ways. We did academic research on emotional connectedness and employee sentiment, and connected it to something called affective commitment. Affective, so the affect. And commitment itself. And look what John just said. He said, kindred spirits, Clint, Lou, and I, passion for drumming, purpose, focus on changing organizations. Right on, John. Yeah, exactly. Love it. This is I love you. This is I love you, and then rock and roll.
Rock on, John.
Yeah, John's John will tell us he was a drummer in the 80s for some glam bands, right, John? So he's a cool guy. So we all believe in the same thing, actually. So effective commitment is basically, it's one of three kinds of ways of being committed to an organization. The other two is normative. And then you kind of look at normative is basically, I think like I have to be here, right? Or something horrible will happen to me. The other one's continuance, which is I have to do this because John says, I love you too, change the world. So the other one is like, I've got to be here. I've got to continue because I need the paycheck, right? But the new one that happens everywhere is affective. I feel like I want to be here because I dig being here. I love doing what I'm doing. And as John said, change the world. So yes, connect to purpose. It's like we're like, you and I are very similar in a lot of stuff. So it's super cool. So John's here. So let me ask you a question. Have you've heard of the Manjani's? There's also like, so Stu Copeland. That's what I wanted. Stu Copeland, when he was and you know this as a drummer, when he was first drumming, he heard what was in between the beats, the syncopated in between the beats.
Yes.
And you know this. So he created kind of his personal rhythm and personal signature. Chester Thompson did the same thing, really. I mean, you go back to the beginning of time for drummers, but Stu in particular he syncopated and he looked at what's in between the beat. And you talked about that signature sort of branding philosophy that you have in drumming too, and Wipeout, you know, the own signature. What would you say? You know, we can talk about leadership, but do you have a signature drum brand that you do? I have one too. I was just wondering if your drum brand or leadership brand or something that you kind of noticed when you play that you do a lot, and then we could kind of connect it.
Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, every drummer has like their own fingerprint, you could call it. Like even my setup, I am known for having a floor tom on my left side as well as on my right side.
Ambidextrous.
Don't do that. Yeah. I will even mix my toms. Instead of going from an 8-inch tom to a 10-inch tom to a 12-inch tom, I'll sometimes put the 12-inch here and put the 8-inch over here.
Oh, sweet.
And so mixing that up. So there's just that, like my cymbal preferences, my depths, because that controls my sound. That controls my playing style. So there's a whole lesson in that and why I choose to play that way. So many drummers would recognize that sound just from how my setup is and how I would play or how I would tune, the heads that I use, the cymbals that I endorse, even down to the sticks that I play with, because they all create different sounds. The other thing I would say is kind of a signature move. So right now what I do a lot of is professional speaking, and the drumming is an aspect of that. And so it's a lot of drum soloing, a lot of solo work. So something that I do in my solo is I blindfold myself.
And I used to do that. Yeah.
I play blindfolded. So a lot of people have known me or have branded me as the blindfolded drummer. So
it's just so funny. When I was in a band after college, we had a play space. This is my first band after college. We had a play space, and it was pitch dark because we didn't have any windows. You know what you know, remember that? So the guys would go do their thing. They would go, you know, the breaks, right? I was never into breaks because I didn't do what the guys did during breaks, if you know what I mean, right?
Yep.
So I was not into that. So I said, shut the door, pitch dark, and I played, right? Because so this is this thing about feeling. You feel the drums. You let go of one of your senses.
Yeah.
And then you can see all. So it's sort of like, you know, if we made the allegory with employees, it's you let go of the sense of feeling very angry. And you let go of that emotional ego part or the politics, the roadblocks. That's whatever is in your way. And you can see more. You get rid of this idea of that I will fail.
Yeah.
What if I fail? You know, do I have sales anxiety? Some sort of performance anxiety? And you put this on, and you know where everything is. You know that you just set up your kit to be the 8, 9, right, 10, and 12, and floor. You probably have. I bet you have a high top. You have a hi hat on left and right? Because you're ambidextrous. Right?
I do.
Totally sweet.
On both sides. Yeah.
Totally sweet. You know, so like you have your brand, right? Everybody has to find that personal leadership philosophy brand, right? And behaviors that they dig or they can be in as leaders.
there's such a you brought up a really great point. There's such a balance as a drummer that relates to business, in that we have music that we play to as drummers, but most drummers don't read music line for line, meaning that they might know how to read, but when they sit down with a band, they'll look at it. We call it charting. You'll chart out the music. You'll get the the breaks and where's the chorus, and we understand the rules of music and a bridge and the composition of a song. But after that, everything else that really makes a drummer significant in a band is right here.
Right.
Is what they feel. So in business, we would call that tangibles versus intangibles. So the hardcore rules and bottom line and the development and profitability and the market and marketing, and there's rules in business, there really are. But then there's the intangibles, the love, the passion, the empathy, the connection, the things that you can't really chart. Yeah. You can't track that. But
that's 80-20.
Does it matter?
It's 80-20, 20% stick control at rudiments, 80% heart, knowing what things are going, hearing to the band. The Allman Brothers, I was up for them. I was a contract drummer and was up for them for a while. And so anyway, I could tell you a story later, but the Allman Brothers, it's all about what's in between, right?
Yeah.
And you gotta, like, even, I know he passed away, Dickie Betts talks about this all the time. He said, you got to hear the guitarist follow the guitarist, because Allman Brothers was all lead and rhythm. So the lead and rhythm was everything.
Yeah.
Right. It was everything, man. And like, so other bands, it's bass, other bands, it's keyboards. Right. And, John has a lot of things he'll say. John, I'll get to you in a sec. But it was keys and rhythm. Ben Folds, he went to drum school, and he got kicked out. Everyone was making fun of him, right? So he said, I'm going to go to the keys. So that piano became the rhythm section, and the drummer followed the pianist. And it was mostly 4/4 because he left drum school, but I mean, he can do 6/8 and different signatures on the piano. He's he's like one of the most brilliant musicians that I think since Beethoven. And it's kind of crazy to say that, but I really do believe Ben Folds is the Mozart of our time. And I'm not sure what you believe. I think he literally is Mozart, Beethoven. He's the most brilliant mind I've ever known. So that kind of, movement from drums to piano is his sig, right? And like his heart and his stories, right? That's it. That's what makes him extremely famous and lovable. These stories about where his divorces, his children, his love for his children, his failures, abortions he went through with his family. Everything about him. But John just wants to say this one thing. He had a Bell Ride 22, loved to attach his photo set. Yes, attach it, John. And that John worked with the International Hotels Group's executive team with top 175 leaders through a Cadence CEO on bass drum. Yeah. That's funny, man. So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing. Like you get a CEO get on a bass drum, you get people. It kind of it makes them human, because we always say we're all drummers, right?
Totally. And I think too, I've never had anybody come up to me after a performance or a show or a drum solo and say, that's not a drummer, that commented and said, oh man, I love your technique. I love, oh man, the way you played those paradiddles and your flam accents. Yeah. Nobody says that. What they comment on is the energy, my passion. Like, I just like your feeling and how it made me feel. Like, that's what I loved. Like, they love seeing that energy. And again, so it's an interesting thing between what drummers would recognize and what the general audience would recognize. And I think that's really important to know in leadership, that most employees could care less on how, they don't work at a company because you ran a meeting really well. They don't work at a company because you're really good at market projections. Like, that's not what they talk about. What they talked about is how you made them feel when you got to the part about them. They talk about the moments. where you communicated potential, worth, when you advocated for them, when you created growth opportunity. You know, you look at the people in your life that you remember. You know, if I were to ask you to tell me who the last 3 NFL MVPs were, or who were the last 2 Academy Award winners for Best Actor, or could you tell me who the last 2 Miss Americas were? Like, most people have no idea. They have no clue who those people are.
Yeah, it's, right, of course. Yeah.
But then if I were to ask you, tell me the name of the teacher that made the biggest difference in your life. You already mentioned them. What's the teacher's name?
Yeah, George Holmes.
George Holmes, right?
Drum teacher. Yeah, absolutely.
Or think of, you know, what's the name of one person in your current organization who has made your life a better story?
Right.
Like, you know their name. And so it's the difference between significance and success. And it's sometimes easy to focus on that development and the successful side of business when it is really the significant that we remember. It's the significance that we cherish. It's the significance that we never forget. And I think it's a really important lesson. And some leaders don't like to hear that because that's not measurable. And that's not focusing on the bottom line. But to your people, it is everything.
And you know what? You know what, Clint? It is measurable. That's what people see. Because culture can be measured and you can connect it to quantifiable numbers. Recruitment, retention, performance. You can. We have that data. That's why we've got to wrap. I've got to send you this. Afterward, I'll show you where it is. It can be connected, and you know, like John just said, the magic happens when you stop focusing on the instrument and start listening to the band. Music is a team experience. You know, and what you're talking about too is, though, I want to acknowledge and also appreciate and respect what you just said about the audience, because as an undercover millennial, you said, okay, slow down, everybody. You're looking at the numbers, the strategy, the 10Ks, the 10Qs, right? You know, and you're so dug in to this experience of the board. You're not seeing this larger picture, because when I drum, guess what? People aren't looking at my paradiddles and double stroke rolls and quadruplets and fills, and they're looking at my energy and whether I'm connecting to people.
That's right.
And that's why they will come back to get another ticket.
Yep.
And you know, she's like, so I'm going to go undercover, figure out what the real deal is.
Totally.
And so we have got, people have to see this, because, you know, they have to understand the power of this, you know, and to let them feel it and be in it, because it's the next level, this feeling and performance and the connection between these two variables.
That's right.
I mean, it's so tangible, tangible, man, you know?
And I think when we're talking about tangibility as well, like, there is something to be said for, you can have all the energy in the world, you can be passionate, but if you play in a band as a drummer and you don't know how to keep time, there's a problem. Yeah. So that's why, again, there is a level of standards that needs to be met. And once that's there, like, so much of everything else comes from that connection piece. But again, I do think it's important to mention that the standard still needs to be there. You still need to know how to play the instrument. There are laws of music in order for people to work together and to create that. Those laws have to somewhat fundamentally be there if you're playing with a group, if you're working as a team, if you're really unifying as a band.
Right on.
If everybody's playing in 4/4 and I want to play in 5, that doesn't always work. So,
and there are tools for that too, like in teams, knowing, and not many people do know the rules, by the way. In teams, that's the thing. There are 4 player roles in teams: mover, supporter, challenger, mirror. If that doesn't happen, then the team falls apart. It's actually the same as in a band. Actually, you have to do all 4 of those things: listen, support, challenge a bit to make it better, right? And then actually mirror it. So you have to do those things. You do have to keep time, right, in the minutes. And there has to be a timekeeper, literally, in meetings, thinking about time. You know, there has to be equal airtime. That shows respect. Someone's hogging the air. You talk for 30 seconds. The other person talks for 5 minutes.
That's right.
Life sucks, you know, and and cadence too. So, I mean, there's a beauty to these kind of, these transformational moments that can happen in the room, and for people to see what's happening in the room, just like in a practice room, right? And having those kinds of fundamental leadership, management, employeeship rules as well. So it's just not one side or the other. So in Ben Folds' concerts, he had the audience takes part in it. He's with the Australian Symphony Orchestra, and the audience does all of his singing and his chords. They sing it and they say it, and they actually take part in an a cappella moment with them. So there's a connection between the two. As John said, corporate. I can't believe John's like John. You're like, why don't you just come on to this? You say corporate transformation is like asking an executive to learn to play 5/6 time who can only manage in 4/4.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I right on. And what John's saying is that, there's more complicated ways of you need to learn, not just in drumming, also in leadership, which might be that, if you're too transactional as a CEO and you're not using enough empathy and emotional regulation and understanding the big picture thinking, or even action, how systems thinking, how your actions affect others, then, well, you're just a 4/4 drummer.
Yeah, well, and if you're trying to play jazz in a rock band, right? There's a time and a place for different styles of music, different styles of playing. Sometimes I'll hold traditional grip because I need a softer feel, and the music calls for that. And other times I gotta slam that drum because that's what the music calls for. So there's also, the style. Are you playing a Latin groove when you should be playing heavy metal? Like, that doesn't work, right? It could. I also want to be careful. There's always, sometimes not rules in music. But again, if you're playing in a rock band and you're trying to play Latin, funk music, sometimes that it doesn't work if that's not the goal of the band, if that's not the direction of what we're trying to do, if that's not serving the music that band is trying to create.
Right, and that's alignment, right? What a leader does is aligned with that of the company, and you're not just signature and right, meter, rhythm, loudness, brushes. So let's get on the kit. Go on the kit. You on the kit, man? Can we bring it? I love that. I love the kit. Such a sweet kit.
All right.
Yeah, man. So you got the kit. There you are.
Yeah.
And so you got the two hi-hats. You got you got wow.
Yeah.
Okay, you got flashes to left and right.
Hi-hat here. Yep, two hi-hats.
So this is your signature kit here. I mean, this really is you. This is uniquely you.
Totally. Yep. Everything on the drum set has a purpose. Everything is placed in a certain height for a purpose, down to the cowbell, to my accent symbols, to obviously toms on the right, on the left, sizes, depths, all of it has a reason.
And you get, I would think, you have your hi-hat on the left is going to give you a lot of noise, hard rock. The one on your right is going to give you some nice, sweet kind of, specific notes that you could use on a hard ride, but you'd be really tight on your right. And you can, so why don't we do this? Why don't we kind of think about the kit, right? And think about, like, what would it be when, you need it, we need everybody to hear you, right? You could try the hard, try the soft. Bring me through how you show the metaphor and approach when you're with people. Tell us more, and love what you do.
Yeah, it's almost like you're creating a recipe, right? You're creating a dish. And sometimes you add a little salt, sometimes it needs a little pepper, sometimes you want to add a little oregano. And the drums give you the chance to do that, whether it's through a drum fill, whether it's through an actual rhythm that you're doing. If I want to spice it up, or if I want to keep it really simple and crisp, if I want to add some complexity, add some dynamics, if I want to change the tone, if I want to go from a high to a low, it really is. I look at it as just me adding in different things, and sometimes less is more. But sometimes it's fun to add in a bunch of stuff and see what comes out. The cool part is the drums give you the versatility to really control so much of how the music feels, how the music sounds. And I've just got the different tools or the different ingredients that allow me to control that.
So do you have, what would you say you want to cook up today? What do you want to cook up?
I'll show you. Yeah, let's play a little bit. Let's see how the sound works, and
let's make some.
I'll show you the difference.
Sure, man. I'll put it on now. Sweet, man. I was just muting my mic there. That was awesome, man. Totally. I love those fills.
So can you see that kind of that difference, right? Of, it just starts out as a simple beat and then add in a little something here on the toms to kind of break it up. And then we add a little more salt and pepper with the second hi-hat. And it takes you on a journey. It transforms the rhythm. I'm still in the same time signature the whole time, but I just spiced it up a little.
Sweet, exactly. And also, you were playing to your own beat, right? So if you're in a band, you might keep the beginning and then spice it up on the changes of the bridge, right? So you have to be knowledgeable of what it looks like. So wait, let's go to others. I love the beat you laid down. It was really cool. So show me a little bit where it gets a little more complex. Maybe throw in a little bit of different time signatures, or what you want to do, what feels good to you right now to play. Go ahead.
Here's an idea. I think something that's really important in business to understand and know is, who are you listening to? In drumming, we call this, there's on time, like when you're sticking on the time signature. You're counting within that time signature. Then there's off beats, where we go off that time. And I've seen many times in business where you take people or an organization that's on time. They're all synced in. They're all moving at a pace. And then they bring in somebody that's toxic. They bring in a loud voice, or they bring in something that is off timing. And it can literally dismantle an organization. And so I think it's really important in leadership to ask yourself, who are you listening to? I kind of grew up on a farm, and one thing I've always remembered, if you put a hard to catch horse in a field with an easy to catch horse, you usually end up with two hard to catch horses. It's the same thing, right? Jim Rohn, classic Jim Rohn, he said, you become the average of the 5 people that you associate with most. I believe that you also become the average of the 5 managers that you're listening to, the other leaders in your organization. We see this in education a lot, where a burnt out teacher can dismantle the whole school because they're just negative. They choose to see what's wrong. And in doing so, it can throw off a culture. So I'll play a rhythm, and then I'll throw in an off timing, and you can hear how that kind of throws the beat off. And I think it's a really cool leadership principle that's worth thinking about. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you hear that? How it's you sink in, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Even though I'm still on time, I just put in backbeats. I put in this off timing, and I think it's really important in leadership to recognize, okay, who's throwing us off rhythm? Who are the backbeats in the organization that we've got to figure out, okay, how can I help you sink into what we're doing? Because if not, it can make it really difficult to follow. Simplicity, Da Vinci said this, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And there's power in that, not just in music, but also within business.
Absolutely simple, but not too simple, man. We gotta move that. Let me ask you, it's funny, John knows about this, and we feel it too in companies and with bullies or people who, are sort of out there. We had somebody actually we did a drum circle with, and John, you remember this, and he purposefully uh, went against it, purposefully,
Yes.
and stopped us.
Yep.
And it wasn't because we wanted him to; it's because he wanted to prove a point.
That's right.
And we didn't need to learn it at that moment. All they wanted to do was gel, just feel good.
Yep.
And guess what happened to him? He got thrown out. He never came back again.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he did it on purpose. He was malicious about it.
Yep.
And being malicious about it, there's a sort of, intention, I think, is important. We don't mean to sometimes not listen or be that way, right?
Yeah.
But then there's the other, and then there's still consequences. But then there's times we do have intention to show or teach somebody something, and well, you got to get kicked out then, right?
Yep.
So, well, let's go. I love you playing, Clint. It's so cool that you're an awesome drummer. I love the way that your drums light up, which is sweet. We got to talk about that, and we got Yoda in the back there too.
Heck yeah.
So so doing a rhythm where it's interrupted and helping people come back into the rhythm, and then we also looked at just how you splashed in a drum journey or a drum story in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
What else could you show us? Would you like to share with us today on your kit?
I think we can just do, there's storytelling in music.
Sure. Yep.
I can just play kind of one last time. We can kind of, I can just show you the dynamics of how we would tell that story and the dynamics of it. And just the beautiful side of music. And also, I think it's worth asking yourself in business, what story are you telling for your people? Is it constant stress? Is it constant heaviness? Is it constant fast? Or is it a dynamic story of connection and slowing down and making it tasteful and intentional and listening? And are we really feeling what people are wanting to say? Like, I'm listening to my drums. I am listening to my drums. Because they all have a voice. Every drum has a voice. And in order for me to bring it all together, I've gotta know what that voice is. Because if not, then I don't know. I think that's what's also a key factor in a good drummer, is they know how to bring out each voice of each different piece of the drum kit to create that better story. So I'll try to demonstrate that as best as I can.
Hey, Clint, can I offer something up?
Yeah.
So when I heard you talk about that, I thought to myself, there are different ways of leading, right? There are times when we have to go fast and we have to rock on it, like Metallica style, right?
Yep.
And then there's other times when we're putting on the brush and hanging out and, chilling, if you will, in a jazz. And like, there's kind of like no judgment on either one that I see, because there are times when you just have to get there. And we're like, this is it, guys. We're going heavy metal. We're going Metallica. Now we have a client, so we have to put our best for the client. So now we're kind of going back to we're going back to our regular rhythm, right? We're going back to our signature of who we are. So maybe you could show that for everyone. I'll put it back on the just for you in the solo, just like what it's like to get. It's okay to rock out. It's okay to be that, and then it's okay to be calmer, right? So maybe like high, low. Would you could whatever way you want. I'm not going to give you signatures or tell you what to do. I'm not your right. It's just maybe show those two. I'm just giving an idea.
Yeah,
because it's okay to be that kind of hard driving leader where you can show what you do, and it not without hurting somebody, of course, and helping other people to come around you and to jam with you, right? And as long as it's what you're doing. Right. So, yeah.
Every rock band plays a ballad. Every rock band has ballad songs. They just do, right? It gives them a chance. Even if you go to a concert, most concerts aren't full steam, 100% chaos, heavy metal music the whole time. Most concerts will have a break, and they'll have not a full break, but like a ballad, right? A slower music, a transition, because again, they're telling a story. Musicians know how to tell a story, and we in business need to know how to do that as well.
Woo-hoo-hoo! There's my man, Clint. Yay! Clint. All right, brother.
There we
Clint
go.
Pulver, ladies and gentlemen, get his book. We got to get Clint's book. And we got to go out to check out his website, clintpulver.com. He's a motivational speaker. He'll bring his drum set. Here it is. I'm going to put it out here so everyone can see it. clintpulver.com. And I'm going to get his book right here. Look at his book, Clint Pulver. It's called I Love It Here. And it is, well, here it is. So, and I'm going to show you right now, clintpulver.com. Here it is. Everyone can see it. I put it out, right? Clint Pulver, and then we're going to go check out his book, clintpulver.com/book with his video. Clint rocks, man. Clint rocks. I love it, dude. I love it. I love all the progressions, your rudiments, your time. That was so dude, that was so awesome. John says, Clint, I want a lesson. Me too. Wow, dude. You have a lot of experience and rudiments and a lot going on in your head, dude. That's a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff. A lot of good, and I mean that in a good way, a lot going on in your head. I mean, there's a lot of practice that went into people. I don't think realize how much practice and daily effort that really takes. Sure. Yeah, that doesn't come easily. Clint Pulver, ladies and gentlemen. Yay, Clint.
Thank you.
Love you, man. Love you.
Honored to be on the show. I appreciate it.